I'm Rustie MacDonald. My story is about determination, persistence, a little bit of grit. I was born in the South to a unwed teenage mother in the 70s, and she happened to be brown skin. She was a very angry person, very much not a loving, tender mom. So there was a lot of abandonment, a lot of anger, a lot of physical, a lot of verbal. She would get into these fits of rage and just take it out on me. I had a young unwed mother who was very angry. Environmentally, the first man she partnered with that I can remember, he raped me at the age of 2. He beat her. I was sleeping and she was next to me, and I woke up to her being covered in her, where he threw a lock, like the key locks, the big square ones, and hit her right in the forehead. And I woke up to it falling on me and covered in, because that was the level of in my life. Do I think she's a bad person? No. I think that that's what she knew. I don't think we treat our daughters in a way that enables them to say, no, this is not okay. We give them the tools of codependence, and we give them the tools of excuses and tenderness and forgiveness. When you grow up in an environment like that, as much as I tried not to, I ended up in the same environment. I ended up marrying the same type of person. With all of the as a child, I wanted just to live one more day because I didn't know if I was going to. I have a crack from here to here in my skull because of when she married later on. I was 7 or 8. He also was. There was a lot of locking the door, and I would not be able to come in all day. So I was left out alone a lot as a child. I made a lot of friends with spiders and scorpions and tadpoles and things like that because, well, I'm in Florida and I have nothing else to do. As I got older, I would get flashbacks during certain moments intimately, and I couldn't do those things. So that made it hard. I remember being 3.5, 4 years old, putting a plastic bag over my head wanting to die because of I just didn't want to be in that. That's a pretty powerful memory because I was so little. Well, there was one time, my most vivid one was a little later. I was 9 or 10. Around that period, we had moved to Vermont from Florida. At that time, the phone came on a cord and you plugged it into the wall. It was like 5 cents a minute to make a phone call, which is a lot of money. It adds up pretty quickly. And I guess I ran up the phone bill to like $300 or $400. And both my stepfather and my birth mother just beat out of me, head to toe, pounded me. And I remember my nose got broken then. I don't know if it was from my knee from trying to avoid the punches or if they hit me. I don't know. But I was just covered in. I remember 7th grade, I was woken up with a pot of soggy macaroni and cheese water, and she threw it at me to get me out of bed before school because I didn't do all the dishes the night before like I was supposed to. And it was just turned into a big punishment morning. And I went to school, and this girl decided to get mouthy with me. And so what did I do? I turned around and I beat the living bananas out of her. Hit me on the wrong day. I couldn't be patient anymore. Until I was about 14, I was living in a very tumultuous household that changed and moved and was very inconsistent and neglectful. My stepfather brought me to Florida so that he could work for the summer. And because I'm just the outcast black sheep, she didn't want me around, I guess. And then he left me there because he found out that she was having an affair with this younger fellow. I was living with his family for maybe a month. It wasn't a healthy environment. It wasn't a place for me. It was just, So I said, well, put on my big girl panties. I packed all my clothes in a big black plastic bag, and I said, I'm off to do laundry, and I never returned. 14 years old, living on the streets in Merritt Island, got shot. There was like a gang fight, and just walking by, and they started shooting just randomly. I didn't get hurt. The people that I was with, we didn't get hurt. We got nicked. But it was one of those things where I never wanted to walk there again. Just once, I wouldn't give them my name, so they couldn't do anything. I was with somebody who was shoplifting. So I gave them a fake name, and they couldn't do anything to me. They couldn't prove, because I looked older. When I was 14, I was with a group of other kids that were living on the streets. We had to steal for food and steal for cigarettes. And if you didn't smoke, you couldn't be with a group. So that was kind of awkward for me. I didn't smoke, and I had to learn how to smoke in order to have that safety net, because safety is in numbers, especially on the streets. There was a cool cat with a nice set of wheels who wanted to go out to the beach. And that was just part of the culture. You would just go to the beach, hang out, or walk the beach, or surf, or whatever. His intentions were different than mine. I gleefully wanted to go to the beach and just feel normal, like a normal person. And his intentions were to take advantage of me. And he proceeded to throw me down and me. And then, like, when I was 2, I just closed my eyes and pretended that I was somewhere else, because you get to a point where there's nothing you can do. And if you fight it, it's going to be worse. And with this fella, he left me there. Like, he genuinely left me after he was done doing what he needed to do or wanted to do. Pulled his pants up, walked away. I started working for a carpet laying company. Oh, I get myself into so many pickles. Learning how to lay carpet old school. This is, 1989. This isn't where they had the stretching machines and things like that. You literally had to stretch it with your legs and your knees, and really laborious work for a 14-year-old kid. One of the brothers, I guess, had a crush on me. And because I wouldn't take any of the advances and I had no interest, it's just, no thank you. He started snooping around and found out that I was living on the streets and found out that I was young. And so they called me, because I had to call every morning on the payphone to see where I was supposed to meet them for work. And they set me up. I went to the 7-Eleven that I was supposed to meet them. And the cops pulled up and they handcuffed me and got stuffed and tucked and got sent into a juvenile detention center because there was no room at the runaway shelters, because there's so many kids that are like not wanting to live their lives that way. So I ended up in JD anyway, even though I'm not I was just a runaway. I remember sitting there with the judge, and there's no privacy in Florida courts. They don't give you any kind of autonomy or privacy. Everybody's business is put on display for everybody else. And so here I am, 14-year-old girl, embarrassed, scared, not wanting to go back to my mother because I knew she was going to beat the flying bananas out of me. I just knew I was dead. I would be dead on arrival. And begging the judge, I was like, I'll be your housekeeper. I will raise your kids. Like, I will be your nanny. Do not send me back. And a poor judge, he didn't know what to do, but I was negotiating. I was a negotiator, professional. He sent me back. I had a one-way ticket and an escort because somehow, some way I was going to jump off of a one-way flight without an escort. I was shipped back to Vermont because I was a jurisdictional issue. My birth mother was still living in Vermont, and so I wasn't Florida's problem. They shipped me back up. She was supposed to meet me at the terminal, but somebody else met me at the terminal because she wanted to get away for the weekend. Now, mind you, she hadn't seen me in almost 2 years, and I just found out I had cancer. So that's the kind of blow. So I'm at the Burlington airport, and her friend picks me up and takes me to his house for the weekend, and his wife is wonderful, and he's wonderful, and their son I went to school with up there before I went back to Florida. So it was nice. It was a nice, at least for one weekend, I wasn't being put down or hit or whatever. She gets back from her mini vacation, basically loses her on me. Her new boyfriend is living there. Again, one relationship right into another relationship, right into... They made me sleep in the lobby. I couldn't even sleep in the apartment with them. I had to sleep out in the lobby. And there were times where there were notes on the door calling me a rat fink or, just really nasty things. I was only allowed in to shower and eat when they were around. So it was, again, just going back into a neglectful situation, courtesy of the courts. I don't think I was even back for 6 months in her life before she told me she was going camping, and I didn't see her for like 3 years. Just left me there. So I was living on the streets again, and the police came once again to get me. In my own very determined, stubborn way, sat on the other side of the door with negotiation. Again, these were my demands. This is what's going to happen. They arrested me anyway, and they sent me to a place that I didn't want to go to anyway. So the negotiation field was not my strength. I ended up in a foster home that was very bizarre. There are certain rights that you have, like your lawyer can come by anytime. Not with these people. These people refuse that. Your lawyer can call you anytime. These people refuse that. So it's just really bizarre. I do think they ended up losing their foster care license because my lawyer was not impressed with that, I wasn't allowed to go anywhere. I was like basically house locked again. They went away for the weekends, and I was sent to a different foster home And that foster home took me until I was 17. So a year and a half, 2 years maybe. I just went into independent living. I got my own apartment and went through that process, got a job, finished high school, got into college. Yay me, who would have thunk? And just moved forward that way. My foster family at the time, they ended up adopting me at like 22, 23, somewhere in there. But over the years, we don't talk anymore. My divorce really ended all relationships, but that's a different story. Out of all of that, I wasn't a statistic, which is what was expected. I was expected to be pregnant as a teenager. I was expected to drop out of high school. Those were the words and the things that were constantly told to me by my mother, by my teachers, by my principals, just because that's the expectation when you live in poverty and you live in an environment. There is no hope for these people. There's no hope that you're going to be anything more than just a repeat story. And we still, after all these years, I still see it everywhere that I go, that there's just this uncanny inability to inject hope into our communities, especially the ones that are struggling. I was attending college, which was something that nobody thought that I could do. So I'm living in my own little studio apartment, rocking it out in college. I'm doing it, right? I meet this guy at work. We just hit it off. We had a lot of fun in the beginning. He was a good-looking dude, just really nice. And he really got attached very quickly. But here I am. I don't know. I don't have any examples of healthy relationships by any stretch of my imagination, right? And I'm naive. And I'm a very sweet person, even though I've gone through what I've gone through. And I was just like, oh, sure, whatever, la, 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 He wanted to move in like right away. I didn't want to do that, and that should have been a really big, huge red flag. But for me, it was a little red flag. It was like, a little weird, but he's so nice. He's such a good guy. Evidently, I was tutoring his fiance in college, and they were separated. And he introduced me to his daughter, and she was 2, and she was the cutest freaking thing ever. And so without me realizing what was happening, I was already being recruited to be the new mom and like his perfect little version of the family. And I didn't realize any of this was going on until therapy years later. So I got sucked into this relationship, and we did end up moving together about 8 months into the relationship, but we moved into a mutual place, not just his house or just mine. I graduated college, started teaching special ed at the local high school. We lived in this cute little neighborhood. All the kids loved me. We had huge Halloween parties. Like, I'm the community mom. I have that personality, that nature. I couldn't afford to pay $700 a month in college loans and work 3 jobs. I literally was waking up at 3 o'clock in the morning to go open up the Texaco for $4.72 an hour, then going to the school to start teaching all day, then to a video store to work that night, and this was 5-6 days a week. So I wanted something more for my life. I wanted my life to be better. And that's when things got really tough between us. And he started accusing me of cheating on him and put my head through the window. And that's when it started getting questionable. I did try to kill myself at that time. He swore everything was going to be better, that he was going to do better. He wasn't going to be so angry. He wasn't going to be so blamey. It's going to be more trusting. I ended up finding work in New Hampshire, which was from Vermont to New Hampshire. And I got really excited because it was a great job. And I would only have 1 job instead of 3. And, he worked, but hindsight's 20/20 when it comes to what abuse actually means. So we ended up moving to New Hampshire, and that caused even more issues because it wasn't his environment, it wasn't his way, it wasn't his normal routine of control, and so he becomes even more volatile. We got married, and I was reluctant, but it was a big deal to him, so we ended up having a really nice wedding. Got married on top of a 98-foot waterfall in Vermont, emerald green, beautiful. But even the night before, he was putting me down and, calling me names and accusing me of things. So there's a pattern that you're seeing, I'm sure. I wanted to have a child. I'd always wanted. And I had lost 3. And I went through some fertility procedures for about 1.5 years. And he had to participate in that because, well, he's part of the process, if you know what I mean. And he wasn't derogatory or negative about it at all until I got pregnant and I got fat. And so towards the end of my pregnancy, it was a constant conversation about how am I going to lose all that weight? Am I always going to look like that? He's not attracted to me anymore. that kind of thing. And so I had my daughter, bouncing, bubbly little thing that she was. Then I almost died. I got extremely sick. Gallbladder was inflamed. It was polluting my body. So I had to have an emergency surgery. And when they pulled the gallbladder out, some of the stones got caught in my bile duct. So I had 72 hours to live. And I have a 6-week-old baby, and a very abusive husband. And when the doctor was explaining to me, to us, that I had to go in for an emergency surgery at like 2:00 in the morning because they had to give me time to digest my food that I had just had before the doctor came in, to put a basket in my stomach or my bile duct so that it could flow. My ex-husband had a fit because he didn't have any fucking time for this and stormed out of the room. And I'm with my trying to breastfeed on morphine, just became a mom and married a monster. And that's when I knew if I was going to survive that procedure, because there's always an if, but in your head, your trauma head, it's either yes or no, and you're going to wake up or you're not. Then I had to do things differently. And I had to figure out a different way to raise this child because I was not going to have her repeat this story. After my surgery, I came up with a 5-year plan because I wanted her to be able to talk. I knew that he would have to have custody, some kind of custody and visitation. So I wanted her to be educated. I wanted her to be able to speak. I wanted her to be strong enough in expressing her feelings and not be afraid of being hit like I was. And if he did anything to her, my daughter would be confident enough to tell me. And that's how I spent the first 5 years of her life, is putting her through Montessori school, making sure she had her vocabulary in check, everything in check. She's good, because I knew I was leaving him. Lots of fights, lots of physical pushing. Like, he would take it out on the kids. He would push them around. He'd call them names. And it was a lot of emotional abuse, a lot of manipulation, a lot of shaming. He loves to put you down and make you feel like you're just a piece of garbage. And he did it to the kids too. During this time period, I started going to karate secretively. I started going to therapy secretively. It was the first time that I had ever had secrets. But I knew that for my daughter's survival, for my survival, mental health, emotional, and physical, we had to leave. And so I was trying to prepare myself for it and making sure that it wasn't completely me. Like, I'll own part of it, but the abuse part I can't own. The wanting to have a different life for my daughter was huge. I have a restraining order in 3 states on him. Florida's permanent, and that made it very difficult with child custody issues. The courts deemed that the violence was towards me and not my daughter. In the state of New Hampshire, if you don't have a bruise, it doesn't count. And she didn't have any visible bruises. She had a lot of emotional and mental bruises, and still does. But because it wasn't physical bruises, the courts still forced her to go back to him, even though each and every time she asked not to, and each and every time he just emotionally and mentally abused her to depths that are not healthy by any stretch. So I'm now 47. I've written 17 books. I host a podcast. I live in a beautiful state. We just arrived actually a few weeks ago. Things are good. My daughter graduated college in January. She graduated high school in May. Her father's not in the picture and hasn't been in the picture for a while. He doesn't want anything to do with her. And now we're just in a place of reinventing our lives. We lost our house during Ian. So we're literally reinventing from ground up again in a new place that we just moved to. So it's exciting. It's exciting to have control over my destiny and the purpose of my life. And my daughter has control over her life. And people are really nice here, and my job's pretty good, and it just seems like a very positive place to be, reinventing ourselves and shortly building a house. I don't know if I have any magic wand. I can tell you that the things that helped me move forward is that I know for a fact 4 more steps means a world to people like me. 5 more steps, 6 more steps, and you just have to stay focused on surviving the moment. There are many people with similar stories, and it's not about judging or comparing, but I grew into the attitude of what's the worst that's going to happen. I constantly am worried about something happening. That's just part of what's wired into me after all of these years. But the fact is, I know I can take 2 more steps. I know I can crawl if I have to. I know that it's okay that I cry. It's okay that I still feel like crap sometimes. It's okay that my body and person will still heal.